Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Property and Investor Podcast. I am your host, Paul Lanfear, and as you are no doubt aware, my inner lawyer needs to say the following thing. Nothing in the podcast is health, legal, or financial advice. Please do your own due diligence. I'm sure you will. I'm absolutely thrilled to invite to the podcast Grant Erskine. Grant, how are you?
I'm not too bad. I'm a little under the weather. It's why I'm sucking a cough lozenge. One of my kids has brought the lurgy into the house, and I'm just on the back end of it. Oh, my light's gone as well. But yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm all right with that, Dan.
Good. I mean, there is absolutely loads of that about, especially with the kids going to school. So thank you for persevering, Grant. I really appreciate it. Um, so, um, you're obviously really well known in the property space for your architectural work, and you are a very, I would say, you are a different breed of architect as well, which is interesting, because you're very active on the socials.
Hmm.
Um, you're
Can I
very,
jump in? Can I jump in?
yeah.
I'm actually the original architect. I am what was architect for thousands of years. And actually, there's a major issue here with the whole brand architect. It's twofold. One, over the last, let's say, 50 years or so, the job of the architect has been nibbled away at by other, what you would say, professions,
Hmm.
and the edges have been taken off. So, for example, project managers. Project managers didn't exist 50 years ago. The architect was the PM in most cases. QSs, to a certain extent, are nibbling a little bit more away, and all these different designers and input and all this. And the brand of the proper architect is reduced down to just the guy who does the drawings. And also, the other problem with the brand is that there are so many non-architects out there that are pretending to be architects, that are calling themselves architects, that are saying they're architects, that are absolute, for want of a better word, dickheads. They don't have any education, knowledge, experience, and training. They're the SCATE an acronym: skills, knowledge, experience, and training. So they're giving my brand a bit of a bad name. And when people come to me and go, "Oh, my last architect was a dickhead," or I see it on social media, the first thing I generally ask is, was it actually an architect? Because there's not many of us around.
Hmm.
And 99 times out of 100, they're not actually architects. But that's when you say that I'm a bit different to other
Hmm.
architects, I'm actually like what a proper architect is. Okay, the social media stuff, the networking, the marketing, the business development stuff, that's the entrepreneur in me. But the actual
Hmm.
architect bit, I am just a proper architect. Does it play it down a little bit? I'm not a special architect. I'm just a proper, good old fashioned, properly trained, offering the full service architect.
So then, so who are then, when you say that there's people who are doing architectural kind of work who are not architects, what actually are they then?
Oh God, some of them are collect the tokens on the back of a cereal box and you got a free CAD package and there you go, call yourself an architect. Honestly, I laugh at it, but it's true. I see people, it's really difficult as an investor, as I go to these networking groups and they say, oh yeah, there's so-and-so the architect, and I walk over and chatting to him. And you begin to realize that actually, like there's a guy who does the rounds in the Northwest. He's got no architectural training at all. I believe somebody told me once that he started as a CAD technician detailing air conditioning units and then started doing a few foreigners as house extensions and then it's sort of just now does like HMOs. But some of the stuff he does is just crap. It's technically wrong, doesn't meet statutory approvals, yada, yada, yada. And the problem that I then have is I come along afterwards and I go, you should use an architect. No, oh no, the last architect I used was a dickhead. Well, not an
Mhm.
architect. It's just some guy with
Mhm.
a cheap CAD package. You
Okay,
know,
well, so this is obviously begging the obvious question, which is what makes architects different, and
Yep.
and therefore why should we be using them?
Education level.
Okay.
So to become an architect, you need to have 7 years education under your belt. Okay. In essence, it's the equivalent of 3 degrees. Okay. You do your first degree, you go and work for a year. You do your second degree, you go and work for a year, and you apply for your professional chartership, which is like a year-long degree level type work. Um, Once you've completed all those, you can be on the ARB register, the Architects Registration Board. So if anybody tells you're an architect, you go and you search that register. You'll find me on it.
Mhm.
It's a protected title. We're getting very ranty here at the beginning. I'm sorry, Paul. Your
No,
podcast
this
is
is
getting
good.
really
This is
ranty,
good. Let's
Matthew.
go. No,
But
no, no,
it's
this
a
is good.
protected title.
And just to forewarn you, Grant, I think I've got some other questions on my list that I've been reflecting on overnight that I think are going to make you even more ranty, but we'll see when we get there.
Mate, there used to be a social media thing, Rants. I used to fire it. Well, in the early days when I was trying to build a following, I used to just go on and rant in the morning, and it was called Rants. And funny, a recruiter got me on a podcast, an architectural recruiter asking me about building businesses and stuff. And I just went on a rant, and then he sound bit all the rants and had a little theme tune, a little jingle, Rants, and it went out every day. And there's like, no. So I'm an impassioned person. Architect is a protected title. To be an architect, you need to be 7 years qualified or 7 years educated. You also agree to do I think it's 35 years. We smash it, like we don't even worry about the minimum, but it's a minimum of 35 hours a year recorded and submitted CPD, continued professional development. So if you break that down, it means that every single month we're sitting in lectures, in webinars, technically specific. Maybe it's health and safety, maybe it's weather flashing detailing or whatever. Every month we're continuing and maintaining our education knowledge. We need to carry a certain level of insurance. We have a code of conduct, which is, you know, yeah, it's just there's a very, very high expectation of us. You can also, you don't need to be RIBA, but we are as architects. My practice we are, but the RIBA is one of the oldest royal charters around, the Royal Institute of British Architects. You know, our the expectation on our members is exceptionally high. And I get quite frustrated when people come to me and go, oh no, architects are crap. And I go, you probably haven't actually worked with an architect. You've just worked with some guy who does a drawing that looks okay. And then you get on site and you realize that there's another guy around the Northwest and he's called Broken Tip because his drawings never work when they get to site. And often I'm called and said, can you fix this? Can you make this work? And he's referred to as broken tape, you know. But it's, yeah, so the architect, I still maintain, is the most valuable asset you will have in your armory, no matter what you're doing in property.
Okay. Right.
A lot of times they'll tell you, don't touch that property, it's a pig.
Yeah.
You know what? I like a story. I'll tell you a good story.
Yeah.
New client about 3-4 weeks ago came to us. They'd used cheap and cheerful beforehand, hadn't gone well. They hadn't got planning. Their exit strategy was shot to bits. Commercial to resi, weren't in an HMO. They sent me a note and said, the first inquiry was, should we appeal? And I sent me it over and I look at it and went, no, you shouldn't appeal. You should never even have submitted this. Did your architect not tell you you shouldn't submit this? It's crap. There's so many easy reasons for them to say no. So, no, he didn't advise us. I go, well, what did you pay for? He says, well, we told him we wanted an 8-bed HMO and he did an 8-bed HMO and then he submitted it and then it was refused. Okay, so you had no professional service, you've had no professional advice, you've had no consultancy here. You've just asked for something and he's done exactly what you've asked for and you've pissed your money in the wind. Lesson learned. So is it worth appealing? No. A lot of reasons why the appeals inspector would support the planning officer. And we can go down the whole planning and appeals bit if you want, or we can just push on. So they've given me, they bought another commercial with uppers, shop with a flat above, 2-bed flat above, and said we want to 7-bed HMO. Very contentious application, to be honest with you. It's in an area of a lot of HMOs. Local residents going to be all over it, yada yada. And I said, okay, well, there's your 7-bed HMO. But let me show you how I would suggest you do it. Because it's an existing flat upstairs, we can convert it into a 4-bed. It's big enough to convert it into a 4-bed HMO straight away. We could have it operating in 2 to 3 months. Knock a few partitions around, tenants in it. Ground floor. It has the fallback position for Class MA to convert into a C3 flat. Now, you can't use it as an HMO. However, we are going full planning and we're saying, well, look, we want to use full planning to do elevational changes to convert it into a 2-bed flat. We're then going to build it out pretty much completely as a 2-bed flat. Then throw in another 2 partitions as a 4-bed mini-mo. I've got them an extra bedroom over the building with 2 flats, 8 beds, with the, how should I say, the below the radar approach with planners. It's all legit, it's all legal. We're not breaking any rules.
Yeah.
It's just understanding the best business approach to developing your property, the holistic advice, the how do we make the most money? So if we keep it as 2 separate units, we don't need to upgrade the thermals, so we don't need to spend the money on the top floor, you know, the full insulation around the perimeter. We can get it flipped round in about a couple of months. We can have tenants in it. It can be paying you money out as a rent roll, while the lower it's still in planning. You know, so I in essence, rethought their whole business strategy, got them a one bed and one extra bedroom, and come up with a scheme which the planners shouldn't really pay attention to. It's just a shop into a two-bed flat. That's the difference. Go to the dickhead, and they do exactly what you ask.
Yeah.
Come to me or anybody like me, and I say, well, okay, yeah, we can do what you asked, but have you thought of this, this, and this? And just to layer this up, we told them to go away and ask questions. So they're putting it out to assisted living provider. Go to them and say, are they okay to take 2 4-beds rather than one, say, 7-bed? I want you to understand that there will be a little bit of a cost difference doing it this way. It'll actually be a little bit cheaper, but you'll be spending your money in different ways. And I want you to go to your lender and check that their mortgage that they're offering you is refinance is going to work. I want you to go to your insurance broker and make sure, tick all these boxes before you make this decision with us. But and ultimately they're doing it the way I've advised. And that's just from knowledge, experience, training, and everything else, skills.
Yeah, definitely. One of my friends did like an award-winning HMO project, and one version of it was that it was going to be a big old 18-bed beast, but like there's a big part of the demographic who don't want to live in an 18-bed building, so he went on a different route and obviously created these hubs, so 6 beds in different units, and obviously
you had Billy Turriff on last week.
Yeah, but I wasn't thinking of Billy actually in that respect.
I did that for him with a pub.
I was thinking of another guy called Kevin who did that, but
it's common. It's common. So from Billy's perspective, that pub, it's all in one electricity supply, it's all in one gas supply, it's all in one water supply. It is one 10-bed, 2-kitchen HMO.
Yeah.
But from the tenant's perspective, you go in the front door, you're only accessing 5 bedrooms. You go in the back door, you go up a set of stairs, you're only accessing 5 bedrooms. So it's 2 cluster HMOs. From refinance, it's not. It's one big building. It's all in one title. It's all in one. You can't actually title split. We did talk about the benefit of title splitting, but the cost of putting in the separate services. Actually, said, well, I'm never going to title split. I'm looking for rent roll and what have you. So I'm not worried about that. So yeah, designing cluster pods, cluster HMOs within the big one, the big one, is the better way to go, because at the end of the day, your whole mentality when doing HMOs is product. Is how do I attract a tenant? How do I keep a tenant as long as possible? That's it. You want to create the best product possible, and the people who twig onto this really do well. It's
We did a version of that when we did a hostel into, rather than a 12-bed, into 2 6-beds, and that worked really, really well. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head with, you've got to be really, like, one of the key ingredients of the HMOs amongst almost anything is keeping long-term tenants. If you have like a really high churn rate in a HMO, it absolutely annihilates cash flow. And that's slightly, that you often see that where people are buying good looking schemes, but in very subprime area. And you have to think, well, look, is someone really going to want to pay like £750 a month for that street in that part of that town once they've lived there for 6 months, and especially if they're walking home at night, there are so many moving parts, a lot of thought needed. But like, I feel like we've got slightly ahead of ourselves, Grant. So let's kind of roll it back a little bit. Like, how did you get into how did you become an architect? Like, why did you do that? Because that seems like quite a lot of work and and quite a lot of cost. So how did you get into this profession to start off with?
This is actually before COVID. I haven't done it since lockdown, but I used to do a lot of talks in high schools for kids doing GCSEs and A levels and leaving and stuff. And I always the main point of the talk is, you don't know what's for you. Don't worry too much. Don't stress about making lifelong decisions now, because in a year's time. So I went to a good grammar school. I did all right at GCSEs, was doing A levels. School never really set that well with me. I wasn't into it that much. Middle of the A levels, summer of the A levels, I decided to go get a summer job, and actually went and applied for a full-time job in the steel fabricators. But I was thinking I would do 3 months and then go back to school. Within a week, I knew I wasn't going back to school. That was it. I just knew I wasn't going back from A levels. I loved it. I'd always been entrepreneurial. I'd always made money. I'd always hustled. I was a DJ by that point for 4 or 5 years. I was working a couple of nights a week in clubs and stuff. So I'd always had money.
Mm-hmm.
A year in, that company, rather than give you a pay rise, would just let you go, hire another young junior in. So I was unemployed for about 3 months. Wasn't overly bothered because I said I was DJing, I had a few side hustles on the go, but I was very aware that I needed to pay my stamp. I wasn't signed on, but I needed to pay my stamp, or somebody's going to ask questions. How are you surviving? Stamp, national insurance. And so I was applying for anything and everything. And I walked into the job bureau. I was walking in every day, seeing what was coming in, job center. And that morning, a two new jobs came in. One was a bin man, and one was an assistant in an architect's office. And I said, great, and took them both. And she said, actually, I'm just off the phone to the architect's office. You want me to make a call for you? I went, yeah, fine. She rang through, got the PA, then the PA put her on to the director, then she put me on to the director. He says, where are you? I says, I'm in Bangor in Northern Ireland. He says, how soon can you get in for an interview? I said, give me 20 minutes. I ran around to Debenhams, bought a shirt and tie, went straight to his office, and pretty much started working the next day. I think that was a Thursday, and I said, I'll come in tomorrow. And he says, no, come in on Monday, we'll start then. And I started at the bottom, folding drawings, making coffee. To me, this was just something to fill the day, really. There's something to do. It wasn't a, I'm dreaming of being an architect. And you always get these dickheads who go, I used to play with Lego when I was a little boy and I knew I wanted to be an architect. Bollocks, don't talk shit. I hate people who talk that sort of lies. Let's tell our story. Fuck off. Anyway, so started working in the architect's office. Enjoyed it. Started at the bottom, folding coffee or folding drawings, making coffees, hustling, running around, doing little bits and pieces. It just sort of clicked. I enjoyed the hustle side of it. And then somebody said to me, "You should get an education."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Ah, no, no, the school wasn't for me." And then but I found this course. It was called an HND in Building Studies. Great foundation course for anybody that wants to go into construction. It was all day Saturday and 2 nights a week. It was run through the university at one of the college campuses. And I realized that I'm a pretty bright guy. I always thought I was a bit slow because school didn't click with me.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, when I'm in charge of it, when I'm controlling it, or when I'm interested, very quick in the uptick. And in 4 years part time, 3 years part time, did 16 modules, got 14 distinctions and 2 merits. They awarded me this big silver cup at the end for across the whole college of outstanding excellence achievement. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't think it was that hard. I was enjoying it because I was enjoying it. I was engaged, and because I was engaged, I was. Somebody said, "Oh, you should go to university." I said, "I'm not going to university." All my mates had gone to university. That's not for me. They what about 5 years in, 4 years in, 5 years in at the architect's office, decent paying job, DJing a couple of nights a week, loads of money, enjoy it. But just something that, oh, well, do you know what? I'll look at it. I applied to all universities, and yeah, long story short, at 23, I ended up coming to Manchester. I always tell people this because, as I say, people worry about making decisions because their whole life is planned on that one decision. I would say it's bollocks. I picked coming to Manchester because I didn't know if I'd like university, and I was DJing 3 nights a week. And I figured if I didn't like university, I'd live it up in the clubs in Manchester for a year, DJ.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I ended up. Manchester's one of the best schools of architecture in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. I was thinking of Hacienda. That's what I was thinking of. Um,
That's a really novel way to hedge
yeah,
a decision. So I'll just go where there's the most banging nightclubs on the planet,
yeah,
and if this course works out, life will be fine. But in the meantime, I'll have a really good time.
yeah. So I came to university at 23. I had a major fear factor. What do you call it? What's that word? Everybody talks about when they don't feel that they're in the right place.
Oh, imposter syndrome, perhaps.
Bingo, imposter, major imposter. Shit myself the whole way through. So I worked my ass off. There's a very common thing that I have looked back on in life, and it's my ability to really fucking work my ass off. You know, when the chips are down, I'll pull the R's. Did very well in my undergrad, achieved like top end of the year the whole way through. You go and work for a year. So it's telling about to become the architect. You do 3 year degree, you go work for a year. I got poached by BDP, headhunted by BDP because of my experience and everything else. Went back to do my second degree. It's a full-time degree. I didn't tell them. I continued to work 3 days a week at BDP. So I'm still working and doing a full-time degree and
Mhm.
balancing working, studying every night till 2 o'clock in the morning, back up at 6 to get out and get the work, yada yada. Um, saying you become an architect in 7 years, to give you just an idea of the intensity.
Mhm.
There was 200 students started in 2003. Only 2 of us sat that exam 7 years and 2 months later.
Yeah.
You've got to really, really keep that momentum and graft up. I think the statistic is something like it takes about 9 years from start to finish to become an architect. This was the height of 2010. I had been 5 years at BDP. I qualified, was made redundant, and set up my own practice all in the same week. That's the story I like to tell people. What really happened was I qualified, made redundant. I lay on the sofa and cried for a week. I tried to find a job, couldn't find anything. And then I realized it's either do or die. You're either going to have to make this work or you're going to have to get out of the industry for a few years. So yeah, then I set up my own practice, 2010, taking on everything, taking on anything, loft conversion. I found I did very well filling the gaps in services that other people didn't offer. I know they should offer, just didn't know how to offer. So things like title plans, deed maps, transfer plans, court-appointed expert witnesses, technical resolution, all those peripheral services that people didn't know how to do. And we were doing loft conversions and house. I say we. At that point, it's me in a back bedroom of a house, house extensions, and then over the next 14 years, from there to here. Do you want to hear from there to here? Do you want to hear the next bit of the story?
Yeah, go.
All right. So, about 4 years in, I get a phone call from a guy, multi-millionaire, guy retired at 27, 40 million in the bank. Said, I've had your name given to me. I hear you can do HMOs. Oh, yeah, no problem. He goes, I want to do an HMO. I says, yeah, great. This is about, what are we about? 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. I want to do an HMO. I went, yeah, no problem. He's like, goes, okay, come down and see me tomorrow. He lived in Prestbury. If you don't know Prestbury's where all the footballers live, south of Manchester. And I hung up the phone. The first thing I did was Google, what is an HMO? That was, I already told him I could do it, but that's, what is it? Richard Branson says, say yes and learn next. And that's, yeah, no problem. And we had actually been doing them, but I just called them shitty student lets, in Liverpool. But an estate agent who managed a few of them knew my name, recommended me to him. And I went, yeah, fine. So researched HMOs, found one in Salford. He wanted to do one in Salford. Found one in Salford that was getting very high rental. Done the next day and I pitched this idea to him. Why don't you set the new standard for HMO? Why don't you go for the premium product? And he loved this. Because it wasn't a money thing for him. It was a distraction thing. The guy had enough money, he didn't need to work. Just something to do. So we did this 9-bed. It was pretty much the first luxury premium HMO around. It sort of set the benchmark. It had sleeping lofts in 6 of the rooms. Every room was properly zoned. Every room had a little kitchenette. They all felt like micro studios. You'd go into them, and there would be like a sofa and a little kitchenette, and then some paddle stairs up, and then a loft above. You see it more now, but back then this was like super innovative. This was like just totally 100%. We're going for the top end of the professional market. No half-ass. No. It even had intercoms between the rooms and the front door. All the en suites were big hotel spec, larger en suites. And the numbers on this scheme. I used to talk about this scheme a lot in the network when I was speaking. I think from memory, he bought it for 150. We did it for about 150, and a 9-bed all en suite HMO for 150. So you can sort of get how long ago this was. I think he was all in at something like 325. It valued out at 430. He took his 80% LTV or 85%, whatever it was. In essence, it's been a while since I've done the presentation, but the numbers, the high level numbers were, it cash flowed at 80k a year, 40k cost, 40k profit, and he took 40k out of the deal at the beginning. Like, it's the perfect project. The projects you never hear of anymore, but that's going back then. And me being me, I got every investor I could, and I dragged them through it. I was overseeing the build and everything, so I used it as a marketing tool. He was okay with this. And we went from doing house extensions, loft conversions, the odd student let, the odd, just a mixed bag, to being the practice you just had to use for your HMO in a matter of weeks. We were getting 3, 4, 5 HMO inquiries a week, picking up 2, 3, 4 new projects a week. And sort of that very much led us into the property investor sector. And then over the next couple of years, we dropped away most other stuff. So now 85, 90% of our work is property investors, and we very much stay on the leading edge of fashion. So HMOs, they're still around, but they're a bit of a different beast. The old stock bread and butter 6-bed HMO, none of that doesn't. It's still around. It's not nowhere near as popular as it was. A lot of commercial resi, a lot of assisted living, very, very popular thing at the minute. Now, I'm doing a lot of SA over the last lot of years. And investors are becoming a lot more sophisticated. The whole investor, what's the economy, society, whatever. You don't meet as many have-a-go investors as you used to. You find the vast majority of investors are more professional, they're more sophisticated. They've got multiple strategies, they've got multiple type portfolio. They're always looking at what's new. We're seeing more investors now even just doing simple, good old-fashioned workspace and commercial, buy a large retail unit, split it into smaller units and that sort of thing. And we try very hard to stay on the forefront. But what it means is I've got into a little pitch here. Apologies, didn't mean to. But what it means is that we're sort of if somebody's making money from property, there's a really good chance we've already done it.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, like your sentiments about how the investor landscape has changed. I suppose I suspect that's part of two things. I think it's one, it's probably the circles that you move in, because you've got to remember that there's still like a whole swathe of landlords in the UK who just are left are really regrettably being left behind by the modern wave of what's happening. And I say that without any criticism. It's just they just are, and like these people don't come to your meetings and stuff like that, which I suspect is the case. I also think that it has become a more professionalized industry, and that is the direction to travel for the next decade. We're going to see it become, that there really isn't going to be a place left for the smaller landlord, because we're going to see so much more regulation.
It's even enshrined in government strategy. They want to remove what they call mum and dad landlords.
100%.
But
The
you've been around
target,
this game.
without getting into a rant, I mean, the target for the government, or every government of this description, is that Lloyds Bank will become your landlord. Lloyds want to be the biggest landlord in the UK. It's going to be those big corporate entities.
Correct.
And some people will laud that and they'll think that's definitely the future, and other people will, I think, just slightly scratch their heads and wonder whether that is the direction of travel we all want.
It's not. Monopolization's never. Look at Tesco. How many villages and towns has Tesco killed? And I'm not slagging Tesco. I shop in Tesco. It's just a statement of economic fact.
Yeah.
How many micro economies has Tesco killed by putting a Tesco Express in a village? Before the village was there, you might have had the petrol station and the corner shop and the bakery and all this. And you stick in one Tesco Express, and all the other little employers and all the little traders just all away because they can't compete with the monopoly. So it's
Why do I feel like I need to give a legal disclaimer here, Grant, to say other supermarket chains are available, and all the comments of my guest are his own or something along those lines. But I definitely see the point, and I think it's
the other factor, the other spinning plate on that is because you've been around property a long time as well.
Yeah,
it's a lot harder to make a deal stack now than it did 10 years ago. 10 years ago, people used to talk about HMOs and they say, I won't touch anything that doesn't make 20%. Now people are saying, I'll work at 7.5%, 8%, 9%. The purchase price of the stock's gone up, the build cost has gone up, the statutory requirements have gotten tougher to achieve. So, you used to be, you bought a house, you stuck a bed in the living room, and there you go, you're an HMO. It's and the sophistication of tenants. The average tenant is a lot more sophisticated than they were 10 years ago.
100%.
So it's not a it's just a bit of a statement that if you're going in to make money, which most people are, the days of just buying a shit house, painting over the wood chip, and sticking a bed in the living room, and you've got a student let which is renting out at twice what it would a single buy to let. It's not what it was, and so that's why I'm sort of saying that I think the investment market needs to be a little bit more sophisticated because it is a lot harder landscape to navigate.
I definitely agree with all of that. So, Grant, tell me, what is wrong with our planning system. So we have like most of the UK is underdeveloped. So,
Yep.
if we were to be in a helicopter above the UK or a spaceship and we could see the whole of the UK, we would see that the virtually all of it is is undeveloped.
Mhm.
It's fields basically. Um, and yet that we have a very small percentage of the actual land, which is actually available for purchase, and we know most of the UK, similarly to for example, Spain is there's only a few people who own enormous swathes of it. So,
Yep.
but that's like a separate issue. But like, what is wrong with our
Uh,
planning system, Grant?
there's a whole load. We could talk about this for the next couple of hours. But let's unpack the two big things. One, and I've never read this anywhere. I've never seen this anywhere, but I have a theory. The economy is pretty much shored up in the UK by the construction industry. It's generally accepted that half of the economy is based around how buoyant the construction industry is. Okay.
Mhm.
If you, okay, do you think if there was the appetite to, because I think the number at the minute, we're about 100,000 homes shy of what we need at the minute, and population's growing, and we are getting nowhere near chipping away at that number.
Mhm.
Hand on heart, if there was the motivation to build 100,000 homes within 5 years, do you think this country could do it?
In a heartbeat.
There you go. Why would not? And then if we go back to the question or the understanding, the economy is based around construction. And if you're smart enough to think about it long term and you wanted to ensure a certain level of economic sustainability for the next 50 years, you wouldn't be building those homes at any speed. If anything, you'd be slowing that down. You'd also be, if you're clever, land banking, which has been being done for the last lot of decades, brick banking. There are warehouses full of bricks that were bought 5 years ago, and you would be projecting a trickle into your economy over the next 50 years. Not let's smash this now and then have 45 years of limited activity. Now, that's just my theory. But actually, when you start to think about it, you start to think, is there bigger wheels in motion here? Well, we could build a new city. You look at what Dubai has done. Well, look,
Mhm.
most of the Middle East has done in the last 25 years.
Mhm.
And you think that well, they built it in the desert with, I'm going to say in the desert with camels. It sounds really bad, but they had to go through a huge technological uplift
Yeah.
to do that
Yeah.
in 25 years. We're already ahead of them now, and yet
Yeah.
we couldn't do it. So there's certainly more wheels in motion, and I have a feeling that it's something to do with it's deliberately slowed, even though it's never said. The planning system is just broke and rotten to its core. The problem is there's no easy fix. There's no real hard fix either. We talk about planning reforms and stuff, but it's only ever a band-aid. Every so often it comes back around to should we centralize the planning department? Should we take regional planning departments, wipe them out, and send it all down to London or wherever, Cardiff, and it's assessed on its merits, reviewed and approved?
Mhm.
I'm not a huge fan of the idea for the simple reason that it takes out the human element of it and it takes out the local knowledge and the local emotion side of it. So I'm not a huge fan of the idea.
Mhm.
But when you're relying on local people, we're getting a bit are you local shop for local people type stuff. But
Mhm.
when you're relying on local people to make decisions on a local level and the general sense that the planning department want to say no. There's always it's almost like it's a target they have to set that we have to say no.
Mhm.
So when we talk about this, when we're doing a planning application, you're submitting a planning application, it's not about giving them the opportunities to say yes. It's about
Mhm.
taking away the opportunities to say no. Because it generally fails when you submit an application, they start over at 9 o'clock on the clock face, and that's a no. And you're trying to drag them back over the top to 3 o'clock to the yes. And they
Mhm.
always start at 9 o'clock. It's always a position of no. And the onus is on the applicant to prove the yes.
Mhm.
Rather than okay, let's start with a yes and then see why we can't say yes. Let's support development. It is and there's so many spinning plates. Let's protect.
Pausing for breath there, because that is like bizarre if you think about it.
Hugely.
How can that be? So how can it be that ideologically it doesn't start with a yes and finding a reason not to do it?
It's
It starts
culture.
with a no and
It's culture.
okay, so what's that about? Like how is that culture
Why
allowed?
does why does every building firm start at 8 o'clock, brew up at 9 o'clock, go on a buddy run at 11 o'clock, knock off at 12 o'clock, start up again at 2 o'clock, start winding up at 3 o'clock? It's
Yeah.
culture. It's what the juniors have seen the seniors do, and it just rots through, and it keeps replicating itself. It's just and builders. I'm sorry you've heard that. It's a joke. Take it as a joke. Don't be coming looking for me. But there is a certain amount of bad practices just get passed from senior to junior, senior to junior, senior to junior.
Let's use this an example. So I was brought up in the West Country in a seaside town, basically, and my experience of most seaside towns, and I say this as somebody who like absolutely loves the ocean, absolutely loves that environment, and really wants to see it thrive. So I say that as positively as I possibly can. But if I look at, for example, my hometown, it's like there's like two streets that have been really well looked after, that have new businesses on, that are vibrant, great
Yep,
restaurants, and they cater for like the 1% who have probably arrived on a nice yacht, and then
yep,
and all the rest of it. But you go one street back, and all you can see is poverty and
yep.
decline. And you know, there are charities working like in coastal places that are working so hard to create a future for the young people. Like they're doing all kinds of fascinating things, like taking
Mhm.
them surfing and all kinds of things. And like absolutely kudos to them. Like shout out to the Wave Project. They do an amazing job. But like we need to think differently. So I'm just picking that as an isolated example. It's like
I'm going to say something here which a lot of the left-leaning people will not agree with. You need to privatize it.
privatize what?
Our towns, our cities, our infrastructure, privatize it, but make them accountable.
Okay.
Privatize it. Because you take any big business name, any first person comes to your mind, a very successful business person. Who is it?
Will be Elon, I guess.
There you go. If we asked Elon, could you fix the train system in the UK in 5 years? Do you think he could? Of
Yeah, of course he could.
course he could. So why the hell have we been dicking around it for the last 100 years?
You're right. But,
Well,
the entire left field of the audience has now
of course
left the
they are.
building.
I'm not suggesting it, but you know what? I've always said this, that a proper capitalist system where everybody gets the opportunity to make their own ends is the
Mhm.
perfect economic system. It's the system that we have survived on as a species for thousands of years.
Cool.
And
Mhm.
actually, this sort of we've become a little scared of capitalism because government don't want you really thinking, big governments don't want you really thinking about capitalism in the purest form. But actually, if everybody has the opportunity to make their own ends,
Mhm.
the whole world benefits.
I think you'll be unsurprised here. I'm not necessarily going to disagree with you on that. I think part of the challenge, if you think of a wider audience, is that what people have been presented with for decades is something which is apparently capitalism. And the
Yeah,
reality is that it isn't. It's
no,
crony capitalism. It's
yeah,
like, governments and ministers
yeah.
who are, who have their friends and
Do you
so
know what?
what,
Do
yes.
you know what,
And
Katie?
I
Like, do
think,
you know it's? I have a couple of chickens in my garden. It was a COVID lockdown thing. A couple of chickens in my garden. Government's passed a new rule that every chicken needs to be licensed,
Mhm.
and I was like, why?
Yeah.
Why do you need to know that I have a couple of chickens in my garden?
Yeah. Yeah. A friend was telling me this the other day.
This is like, and they've wrapped it up under bird flu.
Yeah.
But I'm always of a mind of, you think my two or three chickens in the garden have any impact on bird flu compared to the tens of thousands in barns and yada yada yada.
Yes.
But it's just the perfect capitalism doesn't work either. Perfect socialism, nothing is perfect.
Yes, we live in
Uh,
a so
but
let me bring you back to I suppose the question, which is so and I'll use the kind of seaside town resort as the like vehicle for the question. So like when I ask you what's wrong with planning, you're kind of saying that like ideologically there is a cultural problem within the planning system. So
right,
then if I give you the example of like a seaside town, and obviously there's some seaside towns that are absolutely smashing it, and like and I'm thrilled to see that.
yeah,
But if you then look at the ones that we know have like an aging population,
Yep.
the kind of revenues in the area are like consistently falling,
Yep.
and other than within after the front facade of the area,
Yep.
there's just like terrible decline. You would think in in that situation that aside from all the charities who are doing like amazing work, that there would be like an obsession to reinvest and reinvigorate them,
Yep.
and in a particular put the focus on young people and creating opportunities so that if they want to, they
So
can stay in their hometown.
who
And
vote? Who votes? Who votes?
old people,
Who spends money?
well, they don't, yeah,
And we'll go another level on this. You're creating a think tank. Your think tank will probably be from the same group of people, white middle class people for the most part, who
okay,
are going to if you wanted to portray an image of pick your town or any town, let's pick Blackpool,
yeah,
and they portray what they want to be seen as. And as
hmm
you said, it's the same problem. First street's beautiful, second street's a bit more tits and all day drinking, but it's titty, it's stag parties. And then you go off another street back, and it's all alcohol
yeah,
dependency and drug dependency, and and it's just it's terrible. You could fix that. Paul Lanfear. If you were to turn around and said, Paul, do you know what? Fix this town. You could
yeah,
do it. The problem is that I wrote my dissertation on Liverpool. Liverpool's a really interesting time because Liverpool flips back and forward between two political parties, Labour and Tory, back and forth. And every time it flips over, and this is going back over the last, say, was it from the early 70s? Every time it flips over, the first thing the new party comes in and goes, they were a bunch of dickheads. They were doing everything wrong. We need to wipe the slate clean and start again. And then they spend the first couple of years rewriting their whole agenda and strategy and yada yada and yada. And they've loads of think tanks and they've loads of discussion and they've loads of what we're going to do next. And then, but they don't really do anything for 5 years. And then they get
mhm,
poofed out, and the next one, the other ones get put back in. And then they do the same thing and they spend years not doing anything. They talk about it and nothing ever gets done. And it just perpetuates itself over and over and over.
mhm,
That the town, I don't know what town you're from, but I
mhm,
could bet
mhm,
that if you give a good architect, because I often think architects are great problem solvers, and often all through university we're tasked with how do you improve an area. That's often the
mhm,
question. The one I was given was Barrow and Furnace. Do you know
mhm.
Barrow and Furnace?
Yeah, yeah, I do, yeah, yeah.
It's the biggest shit tip at the end of a 30-mile peninsula. Unfortunately, it's a really struggling town down a big finger into the sea. It's got the highest drug dependency, alcohol dependency, and I come up with an idea. Okay, it's very, very high level, very sort of perfect world thinking. But I come up with an idea of make it a car-free town. That was the first thing I said, was to make it take the car away from it. Put good infrastructure links up to the top of the peninsula, but the
Mhm,
town itself is car-free. And then you start getting this, asking this, well, what do you do with the space that you release? And I
mhm,
started saying, make gardens, give people space to grow vegetable, to hang out, to talk, to recreate that social infrastructure, to have that your neighbor, not the
mhm.
lock in that we're getting so caught up in. Because I have a belief that a lot of societal issues are actually because of social media and TV and lock in. And you go and you spend 10 hours a day at your job, you come back and you lock yourself back inside, and then you get up in the morning, you go do something. You don't really speak over your garden fence anymore, and you don't check in with the old lady up the street like we did 50 years ago. Um, I would suggest that your village, your town that you were brought up in, if you were to turn it into maybe pick something, a retirement town or a surfing town
Mhm,
or whatever, you pick something and you
mhm,
commit fully to it, and
mhm.
you go, you know what? Let's turn it into a hippie commune and let everybody come and grow weed and sew stuff out of hemp, whatever. It doesn't matter. An artist that you give the town a density that makes it stand out, that it attracts people. And my whole idea was that would make Barrow a bit of a hippie town type,
Yeah, yeah.
self-sustained, a little bit off grid, a little bit edgy, a little bit of an opportunity where because there's no jobs in it. And if you want to work, you've got to travel 30 miles back up the peninsula. So let's
Mhm,
try and take the dependency of money out of the town a little bit. So I said it got very sort of perfect world theoretical. But you know what? There's a lot that you can take from that and
mhm,
then use it to create
mhm,
a place where people want to live. You know, unfortunately, we're in the UK, we're becoming very like what's happened a lot across a lot of Eastern Asia, where the rural areas are becoming depopulated because everybody's being dragged towards the cities because that's where the jobs are and that's where the lifestyle is and that's where the money is. And you can't, you know, so you end up going to the edges, the peripheries to retire or
Mhm.
what have
Mhm.
you. But regeneration isn't actually that hard. The problem is that nobody really grabs it by the throat and does it properly.
Mhm.
And you know, we'll talk about it, we'll think about it, we'll paste over the cracks, we'll do a nice freaking poster or something, and we'll you know, but actually, it just needs to be properly done at an infrastructural level. Create good housing stock, attract people in from a demographic, whatever the demographic is, whether
Mhm.
that is pensioners, because people create economy.
Mhm.
Even just quite simply, you look at the microeconomy of a building site. Just one
Mhm.
building site. Let's say we're building a, let's be kind, we're building a really nice Tesco in an area. It's going to be a beautiful place. And one of the big um, contracting firms are in the area. And you look around the periphery and you realize that the chippy's doing really well for a couple of years, and the corner shop's doing really well. A couple of buddy shops, you might get a couple of burger vans rocking up every day. You'll get the van that's selling hard hats and boots off the back, you know. And you see these microeconomies which last for quite a short period of time, maybe the 3 years that the site is there,
Mhm.
and then they move on. But ultimately, it's people, and that's one of the reasons I'm of a mind that there's a certain sway back towards, or the government aren't fighting as hard for the hybrid working model or the work from home as perhaps they could. That's because they want people back on the streets. They want
Mhm.
money back in the tills. They want the
Mhm.
spending money to sustain businesses, to keep jobs created, to tax, because you get taxed at every, you know, when you actually
Yeah.
sit and work out every time you spend a pound, how many times that pound gets taxed. It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
crazy. Um,
And, like, if you really want to depress yourself, you can do. There's various places you can look, and you can kind of do calculations as to how far through the year you have to work before you actually be able to keep a pound of your own money. And
yeah, you don't even want to think about it.
you know, for a lot of people, that's like 6, 7 months into the year, and all the rest of it. When you factor in all the indirect taxation as well,
Yeah.
that's very interesting. Taking us in a slightly different direction. What may, and I don't want you to fall out within your existing client base. So, like, maybe
Well,
give this a question, like a second of thought. What makes let me contextualize the question. A question I get asked all the time is, I've just been quoted these professional fees.
mm,
What do you think?
mm,
And I understand why people ask that question, because in the last 5 years, most professional fees seem to have doubled, and that's because of the environment that we're in. You know,
mm.
like, and everybody's got a bigger overheads, the cost of living crisis, like genuine inflation.
And just because they can, because
Yeah,
everybody got busy. You know,
but everybody, yeah, but everybody's got to kind of make a living as
yeah.
well. And so the way that I kind of position that is, well, it is an investment in your business. So how
Hmm.
much is it worth for this to go well? And I'm
Hmm.
specifically in the camp of, don't take health, financial, or legal advice from anybody who doesn't have professional indemnity insurance
Hmm.
behind it.
Yep.
You know, it just doesn't make any sense. You know, if you're recovering £200,000 worth of a debt, you know, you want to employ the dogs of war. Like, you want
Yeah.
to throw there, that is worth investing money to get the money back. Equally, if you're going to buy £500,000 worth of, you know, failed hotel or failed B&B and try and
Mhm.
restore it, you know, that you're going to have a lot of acquisition costs, but you're spending £500,000. So have a think about it. So that's the context of the question. The
Mhm.
specific question is, what makes a great client
Mhm.
and what makes a poor client? And
Okay.
the sort, I suppose, the subtext of this question is, when people complain to me, for example, about my former life as a lawyer, obviously there's really,
I didn't realize you were a lawyer. My
yeah.
wife's a lawyer.
There's lots of poor lawyers out there, but the truth is there's lots of poor clients out there. And the
Mhm.
reason they didn't get the service they wanted is because they weren't a great client.
Yep.
And you know, I could delve into the detail of why that is. But Grant, in terms of the work that you do, what makes a client, a great client, i.e., puts you in a position where you can deliver them the absolute banging service.
Hmm.
And then what, in contrast to that, what makes somebody not a good client and the outcome being you're just not able to serve them in the way that you want to, and maybe everybody's a bit frustrated by the end of the process.
Yeah. I'm very lucky. After 15 odd years, I don't have to work with dickheads anymore. So it's a bit of a kudos to a client. If you're listening and listening to your client and you're still working with me, it's because you're not a bad client, because I cut bad clients. Don't need to work with them. I've been called all the names under the sun too many times over the years. I've served my time, yada yada yada. I don't have to. The way I position this is take the property aspect out of it. Getting back to what you said. If you had £200,000 of your hard-earned money tomorrow, whatever it is, doesn't matter where you got it from, and you're about to try and turn that £200,000 into £300,000. Okay? So you make 100K, let's say over the next year. And a guy comes along to you and says, I can pretty much give you the best chance of achieving what you want to achieve, but I want 10%
Mhm.
of your profit. So you're going to spend 10 grand, but you're going to make 90. And somebody else comes along and goes, you know what? Yeah, I can probably get you it. Yeah, but I want 5%. And somebody else comes along and goes, well, I've done it once or twice before, sort of know what I'm doing, but I'll only take 2%. Which one are you going to go for? And that's it. You get what you pay for in this world. I often laugh's not the right way. I do feel sorry for. I used to get into big social media rows with people, but I don't do it anymore. It's not good for my bloody health. I'd get myself quite worked up about it, because people were complaining about things not going right, and it would be everybody else's fault. And at the end of the day, who's at the sharp end of the point? Who's at the very top of the pyramid? It's you, the client. So you can't blame anybody else. I got a shit, my favorite one. Oh, my builder was really shit. Did a runner with my money. Apparently, he's done it loads of times before. Why the fuck were you working with him then? Why didn't you know that before you started working with him? Oh, but he came round and saw me and he seemed really nice, and I went and seen one of his jobs, and so said he was okay in the WhatsApp group. And so it's a big part of our training is training people how to find a good builder, how to do
Mhm.
due diligence, and how to work with a good builder, because there are good builders out there.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, for every
100%.
one good builder, there's five shit ones. And
Mhm.
it's not that they necessarily intend on doing you over. I rarely believe that a builder goes into a contract thinking about screwing somebody over. They generally end up screwing a client over because they've made a mistake. They've undervalued the work. They've under forecasted. They've underestimated the amount of builders, the amount of subbies are going to need, or whatever. But the number that they've come to isn't a fair reflection on the cost. So then they start going, shit, we're in big trouble here. We need to start cutting corners, or we need to fuck this job off, or it's going to bust us. And that's where a lot of things go wrong. But
Mhm.
ultimately, it's the client's responsibility. It's your money. You need to check. And people say, "Oh, well, I went and seen one of his jobs." No, that's fantastic. Was it finished? Oh, yeah, it was finished now. And do you think that's a fair representation of his ability? And they go,
Mhm.
well, it looked okay. And I said it was carpeted. Yeah, it was decorated. Yeah, it was all caulked in. Yeah, you don't, you can't begin to imagine the multitude of sins that a newly decorated and carpeted property can hide.
Mhm.
It's and so even and here's a big tip. Take it away. If you're looking for a builder tomorrow, if you're listening to this and you're looking for a builder tomorrow, I'm gonna tell you how to ask for a builder. You go on social media, you say, I'm looking for a builder in this area that is capable to do a job of this value. So you're pre-qualifying, let's say you want to do a 6-bed HMO, you're not going to get the man and van handyman. I know a guy that does a little bit of work. Okay. So a value of this job, of this value, doesn't really matter if you're 100% right, but let's say it's a 6-bed HMO, put down 150K. That's enough. That you have worked with before and you would work with again. Those last two things are the most important things you're going to say here. And I remember years ago, um, there was an investor. He's done a runner. I don't want to own a whole lot of people, but he did a bit of deal sourcing, and he had recommended a builder to my client, builder well known in Manchester. I knew the guy, wouldn't work with him, and the client said to me, "Oh, I want to bring a builder to the table." And I went, "Yeah, great, fine. Who is it?" And he said the name, and I went, "You sure?" Goes, oh yeah. So and so who sourced me the deal has recommended him, says he's really good. I knew so and I rang him and went, that builder you recommended. Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you use them? He says, oh, I used them before. I said, do you use them again? Fuck no, I wouldn't use them again. So why are you recommending them then? Why are you? But it's human nature
Yeah,
that you want to help, so you give a name. So
yeah,
that who you've worked with before and would you use them again is such a valuable. But also, who have you used them before? Does away with the BNI referral and the 4N referral, and that I know a guy from the networking group, and there's a guy I see on Facebook. If you haven't used them before, don't recommend them to me. I don't want them. No, I only want to know people that you've used and and that you would use again.
definitely. I think I would add to that as well. Like I would always urge people to like have that conversation in private as well,
Yeah.
because I have had experiences of where people have recommended people to me in public, and then when I've sent them a private message just saying, and I have some very specific questions about people I work with, and they've come back and go, yeah, I'm not sure they're for you, Paul, because
Yeah.
actually this is the experience I had. It's like, okay, that's fine. Thank you for letting me know. So it's interesting that people say things in public and private which are different, and
Yeah, very much so.
that's it. Conscious of time, but there are some quick fire things that I really wanted to kind of get into.
I'm sure you've gathered I don't do quick fire that well.
I,
Unfortunately, I've waffled.
I love
Apologies.
it. I love it. And obviously, this is the most explicit podcast I think I've ever produced. And
Apologies. Yeah.
also,
It's hard. I now tell my kids this. They're not allowed to swear, but they hear me swear. And they say, but you swear, Dad? I goes, yeah, I'm Northern Irish. It's part of my culture. You're of English. You're not allowed to swear.
I love it. I'm going to have to put a help warning at the beginning of the podcast.
Apologies. Yeah.
So these are going to be like super, super quick fire. But
Yeah.
you know, like tell us a life lesson, Grant. So think about a time in history, good or bad,
Yep.
which was a pivotal defining moment in your life. Let's not dwell on the story aspect of it for now, because stories are important, but I want to distill or extract from you like the life lesson. Like give us a life lesson, something you learned.
Yeah. Do you know what? Happiness. Be happy. It's really important. You know what? You can get very hung up in the world. I'm sort of been reflecting on mental health a lot more in the last lot of years and contentedness. And I think we get very easily caught up in overthinking
Mhm.
our progression and how well we're doing and how fast we're moving and comparing ourselves to others. And actually, you know what? There's a lot to be said for just being content within yourself. Enough is enough, So protect your own happiness is a very big thing I would suggest to anybody.
I think that's absolutely fabulous, and it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes of all time. The late great fabulous Jim Rohn, who obviously is like quoted everywhere in the personal development space, but is very very rarely given credit. Like people don't say
Mm,
that it was Jim Rohn who said it. He said this thing about stand guard to the door to your mind. Which is really what you're saying. Like protect your space, protect your mental health. Be careful what you let in.
yeah.
That's excellent. Thank you for that. Do you know what? I want to briefly ask you about direction of travel and there where people connect to you. But I do have one question that I've always wanted to ask, which is about around whiskey. So,
Okay, go on.
like, I'm not like a whiskey drinker. Loads of my friends are, and like, when we go to like nice places, I'll let them
Mm,
like order the drinks and they can tell me what on earth we're doing. Um, but I'm fascinated by the alternative investment market, and I know you're really active in the space and you have genuine interest. So give us like a few sentences on whiskey. Should we be investing in it? If we should, what should we be looking for?
mm.
What's the best way of investing? Or should we just enjoy a nice glass at the weekend?
Do you know what? Whiskey is a massive topic. There's two ways to invest in whiskey: cask whiskey and bottled whiskey.
Hmm.
I like bottled whiskey because the way I always look at it is that if the price of whiskey falls through the floor, I've got a nice lot of bottles that I'll drink someday. That's the fallback position. Um, it's a depreciating, or it's an asset which is always reducing in quantity, so the
Hmm.
price is always going up. So at the end of the day, if you buy a 5-year-old cask from a decent distillery and you sit on it for 6 years, and it's an 11-year-old cask, it gets bottled out in the next year. It's a 12-year-old whiskey. 12-year-old whiskey from that distillery is worth a lot more than a 5-year-old, and it's taken the length of time to get there, so it's worth more. So it's not a bad place to park your money.
Hmm.
Whiskey is a very popular drink around the world, but it's fashion based. but I can't really see it going down in value. It's the amount of new distilleries, the amount of emerging markets. It's becoming, it's probably one of the most popular. Do you know, I don't know if it's more popular than vodka or rum, but it's certainly, I would suggest, probably more popular than rum, maybe not as popular as a drink around the world.
Hmm.
Whiskey, like everywhere's drinking it. I like bottled whiskey because, again, depreciating value or depreciating asset. If a certain distillery, let's for example, Middleton do an MVR bottle. Middleton, very rare, every year they do 10,000 bottles. Say the 2024 bottle comes out, 10,000 are done. People start to drink them. There's no more 2024 bottles being made. They're done. So the more
Hmm.
people drink them, the less of them there are, the higher value they are, the ones that are remaining. So you start, and yeah, whiskey is like anything. Educate yourself on it, understand it, enjoy it. I wouldn't invest in it if I didn't drink it. I have a collection of about 150 bottles that are drinking bottles. I enjoy drinking it and trying it and tasting it.
And is there like, what is the most, I appreciate this might be a personal question, but like, what is the optimum way to drink a whiskey?
Whatever way you want.
Okay.
That's what it's at the end of the day, it's whatever. Some people like it with water, some people like it with ice. The snobs will tell you, and maybe one ice cube. There is a chemical reaction in it. It's called guaiacol, I think, or something, that the water in the ice affixes to the oils and brings out the flavors. Purists would say you don't put anything in your whiskey. Some would say a few little drops of water to bring out the nose. Some people would say a little cube of ice. I say whatever the hell way you want, whatever you enjoy, how you enjoy your drink, it's your drink. Don't worry about what people tell you and the snobs and the gatekeepers say.
Mhm.
Although that being said, my brother-in-law came over and he said, "Oh, I want to try a really expensive whiskey," and a bottle of Blanton's opens about £120 a bottle. I poured him a drink. I don't really like whiskey. If you got to hang on putting this, I go, you're not putting. It wasn't even Coke. He put in Dr. Peppy from Aldi, the cheap Dr. Pepper, into a drink that you'd pay 20 quid out in the bar for. And I was like, yeah, I was like, my ethical position of you drink your drink whatever way you want, and I'm watching him putting freaking cheap Dr. Pepper in my £120 bottle of wine. But yeah, whatever way you enjoy it, it's your drink. You paid for it. You drink it the way you want.
Perfect. I feel there's a whole separate podcast about whiskey coming on in the next year or so.
Oh,
Um, and then to finish, tell us a little bit about your direction of travel. Where'd you go from here? What you optimize for? What you're focusing on?
yeah, the big plan is 10 years and I'm done. That's I'm very open, very clear about it. I'm actually aiming for about 6 years. I'm not going to quit. I know in my heart I'm not going to quit. But in 10 years, where everything's focused towards now, that I'm in the position that I can, I'll be early 50s and I can, yeah, I've already worked hard on getting that good work-life balance now since lockdown and stuff. And I'm enjoying the world I'm in, and I don't have to work too hard and I don't have to deal with dickheads too much.
Mhm.
But yeah, the big plan, the big goal, and I say this to everybody that's getting into business, start exit. I didn't exit plan for the first 10 years. I waited until year 10, year 11 before I started really thinking about exit planning.
Yeah,
Start exit planning as soon as you can, because then that
100%.
focuses your whole mind on where am I going. I'm not
Yeah,
just busy for the sake of being busy. There's a really good boat. Will it make the boat go? There's a really good book. Will it make the boat go faster? It was about
yeah,
a rowing team to win the Olympics.
yeah,
And
yeah,
they ask this question on every decision. Will it make the boat go faster?
yeah,
If you know where you're going,
yeah.
then you'll get there.
Perfect. And that's a really good like verbal cue as well to use and think about. And I would highly recommend seeking out that book is will this make the boat go faster? When you're thinking about, I often think about that and use it in conversation with people is like, is this going to make the boat go faster? Or is this just yet another distraction that's going to eat our energy?
Yeah.
And then to finish, typically I put people's LinkedIn profiles into the show notes.
Yep.
Is
That's
that
fine.
what you like in the show notes, or is
Yeah,
anything?
whatever. I'm
Oh,
easy to find. I'm on every social media
oh.
platform out there. I'm even TikToking. I'm not dancing, but I'm on TikTok. So yeah, just anywhere and everywhere.
Are we going to start dancing at any time in the near future, Grant?
Never, never. I don't do gimmicks. I do good quality content. I don't do
Yeah,
gimmicks.
you really do. And do you know what? You've one of the things I always think about during podcasts is like, what on earth am I going to call this podcast? And this definitely been called Grant's Rants,
There you go.
and
Yeah,
brackets explicit. Look, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. It's been fascinating as I anticipated. And obviously, if you listen to this podcast and any of this has connected or resonated, please do contact Grant, get in touch. Um, Grant, thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
pleasure. Not a problem.
Fantastic. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the Property and Investor Podcast. You're always welcome to come and join me at the next Property and Investor Breakfast to discuss this and any other issues. The next one's a slightly different one in that we're focusing on Q4 and how to have a good, strong finish to the year. I'll put the link in the show notes. I'll put Grant's link in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening. Please do subscribe to the podcast. It makes a huge difference. Thank you for listening. Keep well. Speak to you soon.